Welcome back, everyone, to another captivating episode on our channel, where the raw complexities of love, betrayal, and the struggle to decide whether a relationship is worth saving unfold right before your eyes. When Emily discovers her husband Daniel's infidelity, her seemingly perfect life crumbles, exposing a betrayal that runs deeper than she could have imagined. As she uncovers his web of lies and confronts the shocking extent of his deceit, including a string of affairs and a corporate fraud scandal, Emily is forced to reevaluate everything she thought she knew about her marriage. With her children caught in the emotional crossfire, the story dives into the devastating fallout of Daniel's selfish choices, leaving audiences infuriated by the heartbreak and captivated by Emily's determination to navigate the chaos. It's 2019. The kind of year when Instagram aesthetics ruled the world and people pretended their lives were perfect through heavily filtered posts. In the sunny suburbs of San Diego, California, there lived a couple who seemed to have it all. Meet Emily Carlson and Daniel Wright. They were the quintessential power couple, at least on the surface. Emily, a 34-year-old freelance interior designer, was the kind of woman who exuded effortless charm. She had this way of making people feel at ease, which made her incredible at her job and even better at small talk at PTA meetings. Her bright blonde hair framed her delicate face, always painted with just the right amount of makeup to seem natural but polished. And then there was Daniel, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 30s who worked in corporate real estate. He was the reliable type, someone you'd want to trust your biggest investments with, or your heart. His laugh was warm, his eyes steady. Together, Emily and Daniel were the kind of couple who made other couples jealous, or so it seemed. The story starts on a cool March morning. Emily was sitting on the patio, scrolling through her phone. She smiled at a text from her best friend, Jessica, who lived a few blocks away. But just as she was about to reply, she noticed a notification she wasn't expecting. An email confirmation for a credit card charge. $459.20 at Bella Flora, she mumbled under her breath. Emily wasn't one to pry, but that wasn't her card. Daniel must have been planning something, she thought. Maybe an anniversary surprise. Their 10-year anniversary was only 2 months away, and he was the romantic type. Still, curiosity tugged at her. She decided not to ask him about it right away. Daniel came out onto the patio a few minutes later, holding 2 mugs of steaming coffee. He kissed her on the forehead as he handed her the mug. "You're up early," he said with a smile, sitting down across from her. Emily glanced up at him, her mind still lingering on the mysterious charge. But Daniel looked so relaxed, so unbothered. If he was planning something, he wasn't giving it away. "I couldn't sleep," she said simply. She took a sip of her coffee, letting the warmth distract her from the uneasy feeling bubbling in her chest. That same evening, Emily found herself tidying up the living room while Daniel was in the shower. It was one of those nights when the kids were miraculously in bed early, and the house felt eerily quiet. As she folded a blanket on the couch, her eyes landed on Daniel's phone, sitting on the armrest where he'd left it. Normally, she wouldn't touch it. She wasn't the snooping type, but that charge kept nagging at her. Just one quick look, she thought, picking up the phone. She opened the browser and searched Bella Flora. It was a boutique flower shop downtown, nothing suspicious there. But then, just as she was about to put the phone down, a notification popped up at the top of the screen. "Just landed, can't wait to see you tonight." Her heart sank. The sender's name was Sophia L. Emily stared at the screen, her hand trembling. The text disappeared after a few seconds, but the damage was done. She had no idea who Sophia L. was, but she was about to find out. By the time Daniel emerged from the shower, Emily had composed herself. She was sitting on the edge of their bed, scrolling aimlessly through her phone as if nothing was wrong, but her mind was racing. "Hey, you okay?" Daniel asked, as he dried his hair with a towel. "Yeah," Emily replied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Daniel seemed to accept her answer. He climbed into bed next to her and reached for his phone. Emily felt her pulse quicken as he unlocked it, but she didn't say a word. The next morning, Emily decided to do some detective work. She started by checking Daniel's calendar on their shared family app. There was nothing unusual. Then she went through his social media accounts, but again, everything looked normal. Still, that text had planted a seed of doubt that wouldn't go away. A few days later, Emily's chance came. Daniel had left for work, and she knew he'd be tied up in meetings all day. She called Jessica. "I think something's going on with Daniel," Emily blurted as soon as Jessica picked up. Jessica didn't hesitate. "What do you mean, what happened?" Emily explained everything: the credit card charge, the text, and her growing suspicion. Jessica, ever the loyal best friend, immediately suggested they go downtown to check out Bella Flora. "Maybe it's nothing," Jessica said as they pulled up outside the shop. "But at least you'll know." Inside, the boutique was filled with fragrant blooms and soft, romantic lighting. Emily felt out of place, like she was walking into someone else's dream. She approached the counter hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi, I'm looking for, Daniel Wright. He made a purchase here recently." The clerk, a bubbly young woman with a pixie haircut, smiled brightly. "Oh, yes. Daniel's been coming in a lot lately. He has great taste." Emily's stomach turned. "Do you happen to know what he bought?" she asked, her voice shaking. The clerk tilted her head, clearly sensing Emily's unease. "Well, he's been sending flowers to a Sophia for the past month, roses mostly." Jessica's eyes widened as she grabbed Emily's arm. "Emily, we need to go." That night, Emily couldn't keep quiet any longer. She waited until the kids were asleep before confronting Daniel in the kitchen. "Who's Sophia?" she asked, her voice sharp. Daniel froze. The plate he was holding slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his eyes betrayed him. Emily stepped closer, her heart pounding. "Don't lie to me, Daniel. I went to Bella Flora." Daniel's face paled. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension in the room was suffocating. Finally, Daniel sighed. "Emily, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," she demanded, her voice breaking. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Daniel hesitated, and in that pause, Emily felt her world begin to crumble. Daniel stood frozen, his mouth slightly open as if searching for an escape hatch in the conversation, but there wasn't one. Emily wasn't about to let him off the hook. "Emily, it's complicated," he finally muttered, avoiding her piercing gaze. "Complicated," she shot back, her voice rising. "You've been sending flowers to another woman for weeks. How is that complicated?" Daniel rubbed his temples as if he could massage the guilt right out of his skull. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he admitted, his voice barely audible. Emily crossed her arms, her anger bubbling to the surface. "So you didn't deny it," she said, her tone sharp. "You're having an affair, aren't you?" And just like that, the floodgates opened. "I wasn't looking for this to happen," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "Sophia and we met at a work conference. It started as just conversations. I swear I didn't mean for it to go this far." Emily's chest tightened. Conversations, that felt like such a cheap way to describe what was clearly more than that. "What do you mean by this far?" "How far has it gone, Daniel?" Daniel looked at her with pleading eyes, but Emily wasn't going to fill in the blanks for him. She deserved the truth. "We've been seeing each other," he confessed. I'm sorry, Emily, I didn't know how to tell you." Emily felt like the floor had been ripped out from under her. For 10 years, they had built a life together, kids, a home, memories, and now it was unraveling with every word Daniel spoke. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotional chaos. Emily vacillated between anger and heartbreak, between wanting answers and wishing she'd never asked in the first place. The house, once filled with warmth and laughter, now felt like a battleground. Emily confided in Jessica, who didn't mince words. "That man is trash," Jessica declared, pacing Emily's living room with a glass of wine in hand. "Sending flowers to someone else while you're at home raising his kids, he doesn't deserve you." Emily sighed, staring at the photo of her family on the mantel. "But what about the kids? If I walk away, What happens to them? Jessica softened, sitting down beside her. You have to do what's best for you. The kids need a strong, happy mom, not someone broken by his betrayal. Meanwhile, Daniel tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, going to work as if nothing had happened. But the tension at home was palpable. Every interaction was laced with unspoken words and suppressed emotions. One evening, Emily decided she couldn't take the silence anymore. She sat Daniel down at the kitchen table, her hands gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles turned white. I need to know everything, she said, her voice firm. No more half-truths, no more it's complicated. I need the whole story. Daniel hesitated, but he must have known there was no point in lying anymore. Sophia, she's younger, mid-20s. She works in marketing for one of our clients, he began, his words slow and deliberate. Emily flinched at the mention of her age younger. Of course. I didn't go looking for this, Daniel continued. We just clicked. She made me feel like I mattered again. Emily's stomach churned. And I don't make you feel that way? It's not that, Daniel said quickly. It's just, we've been stuck in this routine work, kids. Bills, I didn't know how much I missed being seen. Seen? Emily repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You have 2 kids who adore you, a wife who's been by your side for a decade, and you think you're invisible? Daniel didn't respond. His silence was louder than any argument could have been. Over the next week, Emily and Daniel agreed to try couples counseling. Emily wasn't sure if it was for the marriage or just for closure, but she needed to do something. Their first session was tense, to say the least. Why don't we start with what brought you here? The therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Dr. Harper, asked. Emily glanced at Daniel, daring him to answer. I've been unfaithful, Daniel said flatly. Dr. Harper nodded. Thank you for being honest, and Emily, how has this affected you? Emily let out a bitter laugh. How do you think it's affected me? My husband of 10 years has been sneaking around with someone half my age. It's humiliating. I can't sleep, I can't eat, and every time I look at him, all I see is her. Dr. Harper leaned forward. That's a lot of pain to carry. Do you feel like there's a way to rebuild trust, or do you think this is the end of your journey together? Emily hesitated. Did she want to rebuild, or was it too late for that? Things came to a head one evening when Daniel announced he was going on a business trip. Emily raised an eyebrow. Business trip, or are you going to see her? Daniel sighed. It's for work, Emily. Not everything is about her. But Emily wasn't convinced, and so, with Jessica's encouragement, she did something she never thought she'd do. She followed him. Jessica insisted on tagging along. There's no way I'm letting you do this alone, she said, dragging Emily into her car. They tailed Daniel to a hotel downtown. Emily's heart raced as she watched him check in, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Now what? Jessica whispered. Emily stared at the revolving doors, her pulse pounding in her ears. Now, we wait. They didn't have to wait long. Less than an hour later, a cab pulled up and out stepped Sophia. She was everything Emily feared, young, radiant, and exuding the kind of carefree confidence Emily hadn't felt in years. Jessica's grip tightened on Emily's arm. That's her, isn't it? Emily nodded, her throat too tight to speak. The tension is thick, and it's only going to get more intense from here. How will Emily confront Daniel? Will their marriage survive this betrayal? Or is this the final straw? Before we dive into the next chapter of this story, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more gripping recaps like this one. Emily's heart pounded as she and Jessica sat in Jessica's car, parked discreetly across from the hotel. Through the rain-speckled windshield, Emily watched as Sophia sauntered into the lobby, her red heels clicking on the marble floor. Every step felt like a nail in the coffin of her marriage. She's here, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Jessica leaned closer to the steering wheel, her expression a mix of anger and disbelief. What do you want to do? Do you want to go in there and confront him? Emily's pulse quickened at the thought. A part of her wanted to storm into the lobby, demand answers, and expose Daniel's lies in front of everyone. But another part of her, the part terrified of what she might uncover, held her back. "No," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "Not yet, I need to see more." The two women waited in tense silence as Daniel and Sophia emerged from the elevator nearly an hour later. They were laughing, their heads close as if sharing a secret. Emily's stomach twisted at the sight. "They're going to dinner," Jessica guessed as the pair exited the hotel and hailed a cab. Emily nodded. "Let's follow them." The cab led them to an upscale rooftop restaurant with string lights and sweeping views of the city. Emily watched from the shadows as Daniel pulled out Sophia's chair, his hand lingering on her shoulder. "He used to do that for me," Emily murmured, tears welling in her eyes. Jessica put a reassuring hand on her arm. "You don't deserve this, Em. He's a fool for throwing away everything you've built together." But Emily wasn't listening. Her focus was locked on Daniel, who leaned in to whisper something into Sophia's ear, making her laugh. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in her chest. By the time Daniel and Sophia left the restaurant, Emily had made up her mind. She couldn't sit in the shadows any longer. As the couple walked toward the parking lot, Emily stepped out of the car, her heart pounding like a drum. "Daniel!" she called, her voice slicing through the quiet night. Daniel froze mid-step, his face draining of color as he turned to see his wife standing just a few feet away. Sophia looked between them, her confusion quickly giving way to realization. "Emily?" Daniel stammered, taking a hesitant step toward her. "What are you doing here?" Emily folded her arms, her gaze icy. "I could ask you the same thing." Sophia cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable. "I think I should go." "No," Emily said sharply, her eyes never leaving Daniel's. "You're part of this too, stay." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but Emily cut him off. "How long, Daniel? How long have you been lying to me, to our kids?" Sophia took a small step back, her confidence from earlier faltering under Emily's glare. "Look, I didn't know he was married," she offered weakly. "That's a lie," Jessica interjected, stepping out of the car. "You've been receiving flowers with a return address? You knew exactly what you were doing." Sophia's face flushed, but she didn't argue. Back at the house, the confrontation escalated. Daniel followed Emily home, begging for a chance to explain. Jessica stayed behind, her protective instincts kicking in as Emily faced the fallout of the evening. "You humiliated me, Daniel," Emily shouted, pacing the living room as tears streamed down her face, in public in front of her. Daniel's voice was hoarse as he tried to defend himself. "I never meant for you to find out like this, I swear. I was going to end things." "End things?" Emily scoffed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Is that supposed to make me feel better that you were going to end it after months of lies?" Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "I made a mistake, Emily. A huge mistake, but I love you. I love our family. Please, don't throw everything away because of one stupid decision." Emily stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. "Don't you dare put this on me. I didn't throw us away, Daniel. You did the moment you started seeing her. You made that choice." The days that followed were a blur of arguments, silence, and emotional exhaustion. Daniel moved into the guest room, and Emily threw herself into her work, trying to distract herself from the chaos at home. The kids, sensing the tension, began asking questions. "Why isn't Daddy eating dinner with us?" their youngest, Mia, asked one evening. Emily forced a smile, her heart breaking at the sight of her daughter's worried expression. "Daddy's just busy, sweetheart," she said, her voice trembling. But Mia wasn't satisfied. "Did you have a fight?" Emily hesitated, unsure how to answer. "Sometimes grown-ups don't agree on everything," she said finally. "But we both love you very much. That will never change." Just when Emily thought things couldn't get worse, a letter arrived in the mail. It was addressed to her, written in Sophia's elegant handwriting. Emily hesitated before opening it, her stomach twisting with dread. The letter was short, but every word felt like a dagger. Emily. I wanted to apologize. I didn't mean to hurt you or your family. If I had known the full story, I would have walked away sooner. I've ended things with Daniel. I hope you find peace in whatever you decide. Sophia. Emily read the letter twice, her emotions swinging wildly between anger and relief. It was over, at least for Sophia. But what about her and Daniel? Could they ever go back to the way things were? Just as Emily began to consider counseling again, another bombshell dropped. While cleaning out the guest room, she stumbled upon Daniel's old laptop out of curiosity, or perhaps instinct. She opened it. What she found left her breathless emails. Dozens of them, exchanged between Daniel and not just Sophia, but other women too. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a pattern. Emily's hands trembled as she closed the laptop, her mind racing. How had she missed the signs? How long had this been going on? The betrayal felt deeper than ever, and the path forward suddenly seemed impossibly unclear. The tension has reached its peak, but the story isn't over yet. What will Emily do now that she knows the full extent of Daniel's betrayal? Can their marriage survive this? Or is it time for her to walk away? Before we uncover the next chapter, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more gripping stories like this one. Emily sat at the kitchen table, the laptop staring back at her like it was alive. A cruel reminder of Daniel's betrayal. The emails she found weren't just an isolated mistake or a fling with Sophia. This was a trail of deceit, stretching far beyond what she'd imagined. Each message was a piece of a puzzle she didn't want to solve. Flirty exchanges, secret plans, and confessions of feelings filled the screen. There were names she didn't recognize, faces she could only guess at. It was as if the man she had spent 10 years with was a complete stranger. When Daniel walked through the front door that evening, the weight of the discovery hit her all over again. She could barely look at him. "Hey," he greeted, his tone cautious. He must have sensed the storm brewing. Emily didn't respond. Instead, she turned the laptop toward him, her eyes cold. "Care to explain this?" Daniel froze mid-step, his face paling as he took in the incriminating screen. "What is this, Daniel?" Emily demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "I can explain," Daniel stammered, but his words sounded hollow even to him. "Explain?" Emily's voice rose. "Explain how this wasn't just Sophia, how there were others, how you've been lying to me for years." Daniel slumped into the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he said weakly. Emily slammed her hand on the table, making him jump. "Don't you dare play the victim. You didn't mean for this to happen. You chose this, Daniel, over and over again." The anger coursing through her veins felt like a fire she couldn't contain. Every word she spoke was laced with years of suppressed frustration and pain. Daniel's voice cracked as he tried to explain. I felt trapped, Emily, like I wasn't enough, like I was just going through the motions." Emily's laugh was sharp, bitter. "So your solution was to cheat to betray your family. Instead of talking to me, you went out and what, collected women like souvenirs?" Daniel's head hung low, his silence louder than any excuse he could muster. That night, Emily packed a bag. She couldn't stay in the house that felt like a prison of lies. As she zipped up the suitcase, her eldest child, Lucas, appeared in the doorway. "Mom?" he asked, his voice small. "Are you leaving?" Emily's heart shattered all over again. She knelt down to his level, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "No, sweetheart, I just need some time to think." Lucas frowned, his eyes filled with worry. "Are you and Dad mad at each other?" Emily pulled him into a hug, tears streaming silently down her face. "I love you so much," she whispered. "No matter what happens, remember that, okay?" Lucas nodded against her shoulder, but Emily could feel his confusion and fear. As she left the house, Daniel stood by the door, watching her go. His expression was a mix of regret and helplessness, But Emily didn't stop. She needed space to figure out what came next. Emily found refuge at Jessica's house. Her best friend greeted her at the door with open arms and a bottle of wine. "You did the right thing," Jessica said as they sat on the couch, the suitcase tucked away in the corner. "Did I?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What about the kids? What about everything we built?" Jessica placed a comforting hand on her knee. "You can't build a future on a foundation of lies. This isn't your fault, Emily. You didn't choose this." The words were reassuring, but they didn't erase the pain Emily spent the night tossing and turning on Jessica's pull-out couch, haunted by memories of her life with Daniel and the weight of what she'd lost. The next morning, Emily received a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something compelled her to pick up. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "Emily Carlson?" a female voice replied. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Rachel Miller. I'm Daniel's co-worker." Emily's heart sank. "Another one?" "I don't know how to say this," Rachel continued, her voice trembling, "but I think you deserve to know. Daniel and I were involved. I didn't know he was married until recently. When I found out, I ended things immediately, but I couldn't stay silent after that." Emily's hand tightened around the phone. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve better," Rachel said simply. "And because I've seen how he operates, I don't think he's going to stop, Emily. Not unless he's held accountable." Emily hung up, her mind reeling. Daniel's betrayal ran even deeper than she'd thought. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was a pattern, a web of lies he had spun for years. Later that evening, Emily returned to the house. She wasn't ready to forgive, but she couldn't let Daniel continue living in denial. When she walked through the door, Daniel looked up from the couch, his face lighting up briefly before falling when he saw her expression. "We need to talk," she said firmly, dropping her bag by the door. Daniel nodded, his shoulders slumping as he braced himself. "I got a call from Rachel," Emily began, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "She told me everything." Daniel's face crumpled. "Emily, No," she interrupted. "You don't get to talk, not yet." She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she continued. "I've spent the past few days wondering if we could fix this, if counseling or time could somehow repair what you've done. But now I see the truth." Daniel's eyes filled with tears, but Emily didn't falter. "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed our family, our life, over and over again. This isn't about one mistake. This is about who you are." Daniel tried to speak, but his voice broke. "I love you, Emily. I love the kids, please. Give me another chance." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "If you loved us, you wouldn't have done this." "Love isn't words, Daniel. It's actions, and your actions have shown me exactly who you are." The tension has reached its breaking point, and Emily is standing at a crossroads. Will she find the strength to leave Daniel for good? Or will she give him one last chance to prove himself? The story isn't over yet, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for the next chapter. Emily stood firm, her tears wiped away, her voice steady. "This ends now, Daniel. I can't keep living in this nightmare you've created." Daniel reached out to her, his voice cracking. "Emily, please don't do this. Don't throw everything away." Emily stepped back, her arms crossed like a shield. "I'm not the one who threw it away. You did over and over again." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Daniel sank into the couch, his head in his hands, while Emily remained standing, her resolve growing stronger with each passing second. That night, Emily made two decisions. First, she would file for divorce, and second, she wouldn't let Daniel's actions define her. She had spent too long putting his needs ahead of her own, and it was time to take control of her life. The next morning, she called a lawyer. "Emily, you're making the right choice," Jessica said over coffee later that day. "He's not going to change, and you deserve better." Emily nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead. She had to protect her kids, her future. The lawyer had warned her that divorce could get messy, especially when infidelity was involved. She would need evidence, proof of Daniel's deceit, if she wanted to ensure a fair outcome. Over the next few days, Emily combed through every piece of evidence she could find: emails, text messages, credit card statements. All of it painted a clear picture of Daniel's betrayal. One email, in particular, stood out. It was from a year ago, addressed to a woman named Carmen. In it, Daniel described how trapped he felt in his marriage and how he longed for the freedom he had with her. Emily's hands shook as she read it, but her resolve hardened. This wasn't just about the affair anymore, it was about taking back her power. When Daniel realized Emily wasn't backing down, his demeanor shifted. The pleading and apologies turned into anger and accusations. "You're really going to tear our family apart," he snapped one evening. "Over a few mistakes?" Emily didn't flinch. "This family was already broken. You're just mad I'm not pretending anymore." Daniel's frustration boiled over. "You're not perfect either, Emily. You've been so focused on work, on the kids, you barely even look at me anymore. What was I supposed to do?" Emily's jaw tightened. "What you were supposed to do, Daniel, was talk to me, not cheat, not lie. You had a choice, and this is the one you made." His words stung, but they only fueled her determination. One of the hardest moments came when Lucas overheard an argument. Emily had tried to shield the kids from the tension, but it was impossible to hide everything. "Are you and Dad getting a divorce?" Lucas asked one evening, his voice trembling. Emily's heart broke at the fear in his eyes. "Lucas, come sit with me," she said softly, patting the couch. He sat down, his small hands fidgeting in his lap. "Your dad and we're going through a tough time," Emily began. "But I need you to know that we both love you and your sister more than anything in the world. That will never change." Lucas nodded, but his eyes filled with tears. "I don't want us to be like Josh's family. His parents fight all the time, and now he doesn't see his dad anymore." Emily hugged him tightly. "We're going to figure this out, I promise, and no matter what happens, you'll always have both of us in your life." Just when Emily thought things couldn't get more complicated, Sophia reappeared. She showed up at Emily's office one afternoon, unannounced and uninvited. "What are you doing here?" Emily asked, her voice sharp. Sophia hesitated, her usual confidence replaced by nervousness. "I need to talk to you. Please, just hear me out." Against her better judgment, Emily agreed. "I ended things with Daniel," Sophia began, "and I wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry for what happened. I didn't know he was married at first, and when I found out, I should have walked away. But I didn't. And that's on me." Emily stared at her, unsure of what to say. Part of her wanted to lash out, to tell Sophia exactly how much damage she'd caused, but another part of her, the part that was exhausted from all the anger, just wanted peace. "I appreciate you saying that," Emily said finally. "But your apology doesn't change what he did or what you did." Sophia nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know, I hope you can find a way to move forward. You deserve better than this." As the divorce proceedings began, tensions reached an all-time high. Daniel's lawyer came prepared, attempting to paint Emily as an overworked mother who had neglected her husband. Emily, however, had the truth on her side. Armed with the evidence she had gathered, she presented a clear case of Daniel's infidelity and the impact it had on their family. One of the most dramatic moments came when Emily's lawyer questioned Daniel about the emails. "Mr. Wright, is this your email account?" the lawyer asked, holding up a printout. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Yes." "And are these messages detailing your relationships with multiple women, written by you?" Daniel hesitated, but he had no choice. "Yes." The courtroom was silent, save for the sound of the judge's pen scratching across her notepad. After weeks of tension and uncertainty, the judge finally delivered her ruling. Emily was granted primary custody of the kids, With Daniel receiving visitation rights, the house would be sold, and the proceeds split between them. It wasn't a perfect outcome, but it was a start. As Emily left the courthouse, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time in months, she could see a future that didn't revolve around Daniel's lies. The weeks that followed were filled with bittersweet moments. Emily moved into a smaller house, one that felt cozy and safe. She started focusing on her work again, finding solace in the creativity she had once loved. The kids adjusted slowly but surely, their laughter returning little by little, and while the pain of Daniel's betrayal lingered, Emily refused to let it define her. One evening, as she tucked Lucas and Mia into bed, Lucas looked up at her with a smile. "Mom, you're happier now," he said simply. Emily's heart swelled. "I think we all are," she replied, kissing his forehead. Emily's journey isn't over, but she's taken the first steps toward healing. What's next for her and her family? Will Daniel find a way to redeem himself, or will Emily's new life bring her the happiness she deserves? Before we wrap up, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories like this one to life. Emily's days were slowly regaining a rhythm, though her life was far from normal. The divorce proceedings were behind her, but the emotional scars left by Daniel's betrayal remained. Every quiet moment seemed to replay the chaos, the lies, and the heartache she was healing. But the process was messy, uneven, and far from over. The children were adjusting too, their laughter returning in bits and pieces. But Lucas and Mia weren't the only ones in transition. Daniel had been surprisingly present during his visitation hours, and while Emily appreciated his efforts, the sight of him still felt like salt in an open wound. It had been a quiet evening. Emily was in the middle of reading Mia a bedtime story when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, she would have ignored it, but something about the persistent vibration made her pause. "Keep reading, Mommy," Mia insisted, her small hand clutching Emily's. Emily kissed her forehead. "I will, sweetie. Just give me 1 second." She glanced at the screen. A notification from a local news app caught her eye. Prominent real estate developer faces allegations of fraud and misconduct. Her heart sank. She clicked the article, skimming through it quickly. The name in the headline was unmistakable. Daniel Wright. The next morning, Emily's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends, family, even old acquaintances who had no business asking questions were all reaching out with the same inquiry. "Have you seen the news?" Daniel was at the center of a fraud investigation. His company had allegedly been inflating property values and misrepresenting assets. According to the article, the scheme had been running for years, and now the authorities were closing in. Emily's mind raced. If the allegations were true, what would that mean for their kids, for the child support and the life she was rebuilding? Jessica arrived at Emily's house that afternoon, a bottle of wine in hand. "Do you believe this?" Jessica asked, pouring them each a glass. "He's not just a cheater, but a criminal too?" Emily shook her head, her hands trembling. "I don't know what to think. He's always been so careful. But this explains a lot." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Emily hesitated, flashes of their life together surfacing in her mind, the sudden business trips, the inexplicable influx of cash, the expensive gifts that seemed too good to be true. She had brushed it all off at the time, trusting Daniel's assurances. Now, it seemed painfully clear. She had been living with a stranger. Emily decided to confront Daniel directly. She called him, her voice calm but firm. "We need to talk," she said. Daniel agreed to meet her at a nearby coffee shop. When he walked in, his face was pale, his shoulders slumped. He looked like a man on the verge of collapse. "Emily," he began, but she held up a hand. "Don't," she said sharply. "I'm not here to listen to excuses. I need the truth. Did you do it?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not as simple as it seems." Emily's eyes narrowed. "It never is with you, is it?" He leaned forward, his voice low. "Yes, I was involved. But it wasn't just me. The whole company was in on it. I didn't want to risk everything I'd built, so I went along with it. Emily stared at him, a mix of anger and disbelief boiling inside her. You went along with it? Do you even hear yourself? You're a father, Daniel. What happens to Lucas and Mia if you go to prison? Daniel's face crumpled, the weight of his actions finally hitting him. I didn't think it would come to this. Emily leaned back, her arms crossed. It always comes to this, Daniel lies, deceit. It always ends the same way. In the midst of the chaos, an unexpected figure reached out to Emily. Rachel, the co-worker who had previously confessed to her involvement with Daniel. This time, she wasn't calling to apologize, she had information. Emily, I know you don't owe me anything, Rachel said over the phone. But I think you should know that Daniel's company is trying to pin everything on him. They're cutting him loose to save themselves. Emily was taken aback. Why are you telling me this? Because I've seen what they do to people who get in their way, Rachel explained. And because I owe you, I want to help, if I can. Emily hesitated. Could she really trust Rachel? But as much as she hated to admit it, she needed answers, and Rachel seemed to have them. Rachel met Emily at a small diner on the edge of town. She brought a folder filled with documents, emails, financial statements, and meeting notes that painted a damning picture of the company's corruption. This proves that Daniel wasn't the mastermind, Rachel said, sliding the folder across the table. He was complicit, yes, but they're using him as a scapegoat. Emily flipped through the documents, her stomach twisting with every page. This wasn't just about Daniel anymore. This was about protecting her children from the fallout. What do I do with this? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rachel hesitated. That's up to you, but if I were you, I'd get ahead of this. Go to the authorities before they come for you. Emily wrestled with the decision for days. On one hand, she wanted nothing more than to walk away from Daniel and his mess. But on the other hand, she couldn't ignore the impact this could have on their kids. If she didn't act, they could lose everything. Finally, she made her choice. She contacted the lead investigator on the case and handed over the folder Rachel had given her. It was a risky move, but Emily was determined to protect her family. The case against Daniel's company exploded in the media. Executives were arrested, assets were frozen, and lawsuits piled up. But amidst the chaos, something unexpected happened. Daniel turned himself in. He called Emily the night before, his voice steady for the first time in weeks. I'm taking responsibility, he said. For everything, it's the least I can do for you and the kids. Emily was stunned. Why now? Because you were right, Daniel admitted. Lies only make things worse. It's time to stop running. Daniel's decision marked a turning point, not just in the case, but in Emily's life as well. For the first time, she felt like she could finally close the chapter on their marriage. She didn't forgive him, but she respected his choice to own up to his mistakes. As Daniel prepared for his sentencing, Emily focused on building a new life for her family. She enrolled in a business course, determined to grow her interior design career into something more stable. The kids started therapy, and their smiles became brighter with each passing day. The climax of Emily's journey is here, but her story isn't over. How will she rebuild her life in the aftermath of Daniel's choices? Will she find peace, or will the shadows of the past continue to haunt her? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for the final chapter of this gripping story. Emily stood at the edge of a new chapter, yet the lingering storm clouds of Daniel's actions continued to cast shadows over her life. His decision to turn himself in marked a significant shift, but it also brought a new layer of tension. How would the sentencing impact her children? Would they face backlash at school? Could her family ever truly move forward? The answers, Emily realized, would not come easily. Emily dreaded the moment when she would have to explain Daniel's actions to their kids. Lucas and Mia deserved honesty, but how much was too much for young minds to handle? One crisp Saturday morning, she sat them down at the kitchen table. The sunlight streaming through the window did little to ease the heaviness of the conversation ahead. Mom, Why isn't Dad coming to our soccer games anymore? Lucas asked, his innocent question cutting straight to Emily's heart. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Your dad made some mistakes at work, she began carefully. Big mistakes, and now he has to face the consequences. Mia tilted her head, her small face scrunched in confusion. Like a timeout? Emily couldn't help but smile at her daughter's interpretation. Kind of, she said softly. But this timeout is more serious. He won't be able to come home for a while. Lucas frowned. Did he do something bad? Emily hesitated, but she knew the truth would be better than speculation. He made choices that hurt other people, but he's trying to make things right now. The kids were quiet for a long moment, processing her words. Finally, Lucas nodded, his maturity surprising Emily. I just hope he says sorry, he said simply. Daniel's trial became a spectacle. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps, and every detail of the case was splashed across the headlines. Emily did her best to shield the kids from the media frenzy, but it wasn't easy. She attended the trial for one reason: closure. Sitting in the back of the courtroom, she watched as Daniel faced the consequences of years of deceit. He looked exhausted, his once confident demeanor replaced by quiet remorse. The prosecution laid out their case with precision, presenting evidence of fraudulent transactions, altered records, and deliberate manipulation. Every detail felt like a dagger to Emily's chest, a reminder of how little she had truly known about the man she had married. When it was Daniel's turn to speak, his voice was steady but filled with regret. I take full responsibility for my actions, he said, glancing briefly at Emily. I betrayed my clients, my colleagues, and most importantly, my family. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive: 5 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 3. As the gavel struck, Emily felt a strange mix of emotions: relief that justice had been served, but also a deep sadness for the man she had once loved. With Daniel's sentencing behind her, Emily focused on rebuilding her life. She threw herself into her work, taking on new clients and expanding her interior design business. The financial strain was real, but the independence she gained made it worth every sleepless night. Jessica remained a constant presence, always ready with a sarcastic remark or a bottle of wine when Emily needed a break. You're killing it, Em, she said one evening as they sorted through fabric swatches. Who needs a lying husband when you've got talent like this? But the biggest turning point came when Emily received an unexpected email. It was from Carmen, one of the women Daniel had been involved with during his affair. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, the email began, but I've been following the trial, and I want to apologize for my part in all of this. If there's any way I can help you or your kids, please let me know. Emily stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Part of her wanted to delete the email and never think about it again. But another part of her, the part that had learned the value of confronting the past head-on, decided to reply. Thank you for reaching out, she wrote. While I can't say this is easy, I appreciate your apology moving forward. I hope we can all learn from this. Life slowly began to stabilize. The kids adjusted to their new routine, finding comfort in small rituals like family movie nights and weekend hikes. Lucas even started excelling in his soccer games, his confidence growing with each match. One evening, as Emily watched Mia color at the dining table, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. Her daughter's laughter was light and carefree, a reminder that healing was possible. I like our new house, Mia said suddenly, glancing up from her drawing. It feels happy. Emily smiled, tears pricking at her eyes. Me too, sweetie. Months later, Emily received a letter from Daniel. It arrived in a plain envelope, the handwriting familiar, yet foreign. She hesitated before opening it, unsure if she was ready to hear from him. Dear Emily, I know I'm the last person who deserves your time, but I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for being there for the kids, for keeping them safe and happy, while I face the consequences of my actions. I can't undo the pain I've caused, but I hope one day you can forgive me. Daniel. The letter was brief, but it carried a weight that Emily couldn't ignore. She folded it carefully, placing it in a drawer. Forgiveness wasn't something she could offer yet, but she appreciated the effort. With her business thriving and her children thriving alongside her, Emily was presented with an unexpected opportunity. A major interior design firm in New York wanted to collaborate with her. It was the kind of career-defining project she had always dreamed of, but it would require a move across the country. Emily wrestled with the decision, weighing the pros and cons late into the night. The kids had finally found stability in their new life, and uprooting them felt risky, but the chance to redefine her future was too significant to ignore. After weeks of consideration, she made her choice. "Kids," she announced one morning over breakfast, "how would you feel about an adventure in New York?" Lucas's eyes lit up. "Like the city with the big Christmas tree?" Emily laughed. "Exactly." Mia clapped her hands. "Can we see the Statue of Liberty?" "Absolutely," Emily said, her heart swelling with hope. As Emily prepared for the move, she reflected on how far she had come. From the depths of betrayal to the brink of a new beginning, her journey was a testament to resilience, strength, and the power of starting over. But her story isn't over yet. How will the move to New York shape Emily's future? Will she find love again, or will her focus remain on her children and career? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for the next chapter in Emily's journey. Emily stood in the middle of her living room surrounded by boxes labeled with black marker, kitchen, Mia's room, Lucas's room. The move to New York was looming closer, and the air buzzed with a mix of excitement and anxiety. This wasn't just a move, it was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild their lives from the ground up. But as the physical remnants of her old life were packed away, the emotional weight of everything left behind refused to be contained. Jessica insisted on hosting a farewell dinner. "We can't let you leave without a proper send-off," she declared, pulling Emily into a tight hug when she arrived. The small gathering was warm and bittersweet, filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the familiar faces of those who had supported Emily through her darkest moments. But amidst the joy, there was an undercurrent of sadness. As the evening wound down, Jessica pulled Emily aside. "You're really doing this, huh?" Emily nodded, her smile tinged with melancholy. "It's time. The kids deserve a fresh start, and so do I." Jessica sighed, squeezing her hand. "I'm going to miss you, but I'm proud of you, Em. You've come so far." The day before the move, a letter arrived in the mail, addressed in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting. Emily's hands trembled as she opened it, unsure of what to expect. "I heard about the move. I know this is for the best, but I can't help feeling like I'm losing my family all over again. I don't have the right to ask anything of you, but please, tell the kids I love them. I'm working every day to become someone they can be proud of again. Take care of yourself, Emily. You deserve happiness." Emily folded the letter carefully, placing it in the same drawer as his previous one. She didn't have the energy to respond, but she hoped he truly meant what he said. The city was everything Emily imagined it would be: loud, chaotic, and brimming with possibilities. Their new apartment was smaller than their old house, but it was cozy and filled with potential. The kids adjusted quickly, their excitement outweighing any homesickness. Lucas marveled at the skyscrapers, while Mia begged to ride the subway every chance she got. For Emily, the transition was harder. She threw herself into her work, determined to prove herself in the competitive world of New York design. But the quiet moments were the hardest. Late at night, after the kids were asleep, the weight of everything she had lost pressed heavily on her. One day, while meeting with a client at a cafe, Emily struck up a conversation with a man named Ethan. He was a journalist, charming and quick-witted, with a knack for making her laugh. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed repeatedly. At the park, at the grocery store, even at a community event for parents. Each encounter felt serendipitous, as though the universe was nudging them together. Ethan finally worked up the courage to ask her out. "Coffee or something stronger?" he joked, his smile disarming. Emily hesitated, memories of Daniel's betrayal flashing through her mind. But something about Ethan's sincerity made her take the leap. "Coffee sounds nice," she said, smiling shyly. Just as Emily began to let her guard down, she received an unexpected call from the prison. It was Daniel. "Emily." His voice was steady, but filled with emotion. "I know this is out of the blue, but I wanted to hear your voice. I've been thinking about everything. The choices I made, the pain I caused. I know I can't undo it, but I want to do better for the kids, and maybe someday, for you." Emily's chest tightened. "Daniel, I'm glad you're working on yourself, but I don't think I can ever go back to what we had." Daniel was silent for a moment before replying. "I understand, but I'll keep hoping." Emily ended the call, feeling a mix of relief and guilt. She didn't owe him anything, but the remnants of their shared history still lingered like ghosts. As weeks turned into months, Emily found herself thriving in her new environment. Her business partnership flourished, and the kids settled comfortably into their new schools. Ethan became a steady presence in their lives, his warmth and humor bringing light to their days. But the shadow of Daniel's actions still loomed. Emily knew she couldn't fully move forward until she faced it head-on. She decided to visit him. The sterile walls of the visitation room were a stark contrast to the vibrant life Emily was building in New York. When Daniel walked in, his appearance startled her. He looked thinner, older, and worn down by the weight of his choices. "Emily," he said softly, sitting across from her. She nodded, her emotions a whirlwind. "I needed to see you," she said, "to close this chapter for good." Daniel looked down, his hands clasped tightly. "I understand." Emily took a deep breath. "I've forgiven you, Daniel. Not for you, but for me. Holding on to the anger was only holding me back. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll forget, or that we can go back to the way things were." Daniel's eyes glistened with tears, but he nodded. "I'm sorry, Emily, for everything." The visit to the prison marked a turning point for Emily. She returned to New York feeling lighter, as though a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had been lifted. Ethan was waiting for her when she got back, a bouquet of wildflowers in hand. "How did it go?" he asked gently. Emily smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. "It went exactly as it needed to." One evening, as Emily and Ethan walked hand in hand through Central Park, he turned to her with a serious expression. "I know you've been through a lot," he began, "but I also know how strong you are, and I can't imagine my life without you in it." Emily's heart raced as Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Emily, will you take this next step with me? Not just for me, but for us, for the future we can build together?" Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. Emily's journey has been one of heartbreak, resilience, and growth. From the ashes of betrayal, she has built a new life filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities. As she prepares to embark on this next chapter, her story serves as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is light to be found. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one. The wedding bells weren't ringing. There was no grand ceremony or over-the-top celebration. For Emily, this next step with Ethan wasn't about recreating a picture-perfect fairy tale. It was about embracing the life she had rebuilt from the ground up. The kids were thrilled Lucas took his role as man of the house, seriously, giving Ethan an exaggerated list of house rules, while Mia immediately started referring to him as Dad 2.0. Their joy was contagious, filling the small New York apartment with laughter and warmth. But before the happily ever after could begin, there were still a few loose ends to tie up. Emily had always been honest with her children about their father's mistakes, but she also believed in giving them the chance to form their own opinions. When Daniel requested a visit, Emily agreed, albeit with some hesitation. The drive to the prison was quiet. The kids' excitement mixed with nervous anticipation. Lucas had a list of questions prepared. The inquisitive teenager wanted answers. while Mia clutched a handmade card in her tiny hands. When Daniel walked into the visitation room, his face lit up at the sight of his children. It was clear that time and regret had softened him, and he knelt to their level with a vulnerability Emily hadn't seen before. Lucas didn't waste time. "Why did you lie to us?" he asked, his voice steady but firm. Daniel took a deep breath, meeting his son's gaze. "Because I was selfish," he admitted. "I made bad choices, and I didn't think about how they would hurt the people I love most." Mia, ever the peacemaker, handed him the card. "I drew this for you, Daddy," she said with a shy smile. The card showed a family holding hands beneath a rainbow, with the words, "We still love you," scrawled in her wobbly handwriting. Tears filled Daniel's eyes as he pulled his children into a hug. Emily watched from a distance, her heart heavy but resolute. While she couldn't erase the damage Daniel had done, she knew this moment was a step toward healing for everyone involved. Ethan's presence in Emily's life was a stabilizing force, not just for her, but for the kids as well. He didn't try to replace Daniel. Instead, he carved out his own role as a supportive partner and a caring father figure. When Lucas scored the winning goal in his school soccer championship, it was Ethan who cheered the loudest from the sidelines, and when Mia insisted on hosting a tea party with stuffed animals, Ethan donned a tiara without hesitation. One evening, after the kids were asleep, Emily and Ethan sat on the couch, the city lights twinkling outside the window. "You've changed everything for us," Emily said softly, resting her head on his shoulder. Ethan kissed her forehead. "You were already strong, Emily. I just reminded you of it." Emily's career hit a major milestone when her redesign of the historic brownstone was featured in a national design magazine. The recognition not only boosted her business, but also solidified her confidence in her abilities. "Mom, you're famous!" Lucas exclaimed, holding up the magazine. Emily laughed, pulling him into a hug. "Not quite, but thank you." The kid's pride in her accomplishments was a stark contrast to the doubts she had once carried. For the first time in years, Emily felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Several months later, Emily received word that Daniel was being considered for early parole due to his good behavior. She wasn't sure how she felt about it, but she knew she needed to face him one last time. The meeting was brief but meaningful. "Emily," Daniel began, his voice steady, "I'll never stop regretting what I did to you and the kids, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you. You've built a life I could only dream of, and I'm grateful that our kids have you to look up to." Emily nodded, her emotions a mix of sadness and closure. "I hope you continue to work on yourself, Daniel. The kids deserve the best version of you." As she left the prison, Emily felt a sense of peace. She had faced her past, and now she was ready to fully embrace her future. The wedding was small and intimate, held in a charming garden with only close friends and family in attendance. Lucas walked his mother down the aisle, beaming with pride, while Mia served as the flower girl, tossing petals with uncontainable enthusiasm. Ethan's vows were simple, yet profound. "Emily, you've shown me what resilience looks like. You've taught me that love isn't about perfection, it's about choosing each other every day. I promise to choose you and the kids, now and always." When it was Emily's turn, her voice trembled with emotion. "Ethan, you came into my life when I thought it was impossible to love again. You've given me hope, strength, and a family I'm so proud of. I promise to build a life with you filled with laughter, love, and endless second chances." As they exchanged rings, the crowd erupted into cheers. The kids ran to join them, turning the ceremony into a joyful family embrace. The story ends with the family gathered in their living room, surrounded by unpacked boxes in their new home. Lucas and Mia were playing a board game, their laughter filling the room, while Ethan and Emily sat on the couch, watching with content smiles. "Do you think we'll stay here forever?" Lucas asked, echoing his earlier question. Emily glanced at Ethan, then back at her children. "Wherever we go," she said, "we'll go together." The camera pans out, showing the family's warmth and unity against the backdrop of the bustling city. Emily's journey was one of heartbreak, growth, and resilience. She faced betrayal, rebuilt her life, and found love again. Not just with Ethan, but with herself. Her story reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable pain, there is hope for healing and new beginnings. And that's the end of this extraordinary journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring tales like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.